Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Weisberger, CEO of CoinRoutes, flanked by our relationship management team,
Jacob Telbert
and Carl Savage.
And today we're going to talk about the markets and what's gone on for the last week in the news. But before I get started, being a YouTube channel, please hit like, please subscribe, and above all, comment and give us feedback of things you want us to change. We're thinking about doing a live stream, making it a scheduled thing, whatever you guys want, that's what we'll do. So, let's start off with a market recap. Been an interesting week, Carl. What have you seen?
Overall, traditional finance down, crypto up. We got the S&P down 2.5%, NASDAQ down 1.5%, Bitcoin up 14%, Solana up 37%, Link up, finally breaking out of that 2-year long range and up 45%. Oil down, gold up. That's about it. It's a great time to be in crypto.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that's interesting is the 10-year bond. Last week we were talking about it bumping up against that 5% range, which we know is causing lots of crap in pants in DC. And this week it's about 10 basis points lower than that, so a little bit more calm there, but that's the calm before the storm. And a large part of what we talk about Bitcoin store of value and all that is bound up in that. But before we talk about any of the news stories and what people are talking about, Jacob, why don't you talk about what are our clients seeing and what's going on?
Well, it's been a great week in crypto. We've seen a lot more increased interest from our clients. Volumes are up, volatility is up. A common theme we've been seeing is a lot more people taking advantage of arbitrage via the CoinRoutes algorithm suite, and obviously with increased volatility, increased arbitrage opportunities. So they've been killing it on that. Always glad to see it.
Yeah, I mean, we've been focusing our efforts on retooling algos to take advantage of some of the things that are going on and keep providing a big edge to our clients. But let's talk about the news. And the first story that I got to talk about has me, to be blunt, pissed off. So we talked about last week, and there was a Wall Street Journal article talking about the fact that Hamas got somewhere around $90 billion or $90 million in their funding, and it alleged that crypto was the main source of that funding. That since was converted into action by over 20% of our elected representatives between the House of Representatives and the Senate, signing on to a letter alleging that it needed to be cracked down on crypto. But there's one problem. The main source of the Wall Street Journal article was Elliptic, who came out and said, no, you misunderstood what we said. It's not 90 million or 130 million, as Elizabeth Warren claimed, but actually in the few hundreds of thousands. It also ignored the fact that Hamas told their people, their donors, not to use Bitcoin because it was getting hijacked away from them and they were getting caught. All of that is true and backs up what we know that the FBI says, which is we like the bad guys to use crypto, because when they do, we can catch them. Yet, here we are, we had a Senate Banking Committee where these guys, these old people, were effectively saying to the crypto people, but aren't you only being used for criminal stuff? I don't know, if I were your guys' age, I would be really pissed.
Listen, the reality is if I need another reason to hate Elizabeth Warren, I have one, right? But, I mean, at the end of the day, anything that the U.S. government seems to do with Bitcoin, the markets seem to go up, right? You talk about them proposing a C, central digital currency, market goes up, right? ETF approval deadlines get pushed back, market goes up. Whatever they seem to do seems to have a positive impact on the market. Bitcoin, that's just the name of the game. And the nature of this piece is to respond positively when the U.S. government tries to get involved. So look, I'm happy.
I mean, the thing I find most unfortunate about it is we all love crypto. We've been involved in the space in a long time. And the only thing that's happening due to events like these, due to Elizabeth Warren and her opinions, is innovations being driven out of this country. Every fund is flocking, and me being involved in the industry, I feel like I have to leave my own country in order to progress in my own industry, which I don't find is just at all. And I can imagine a bunch of other people in our generation are feeling the same way right about now.
You don't have to be young to feel that. I feel like I'm being chased out of Miami towards Europe right now, and it is tough. I mean, look, my tagline in this is simple. They're telling lies to justify financial repression. And this wouldn't be so bad if it were 1990. Because in 1990, the U.S. had the #1 financial market in the world. We have the best analog system. But in the year 2030, the best financial markets, the best capital markets are going to be digital. And so if we keep pushing in this regard, not going to be good. Or as we say in Miami, no bueno. So that's that story. The next story, which is exactly the opposite of that, is what's being said about Bitcoin. And there was a Citi report which talked about it as a store of value. Last week we saw Larry Fink talking about it as a store of value. Look, there's a pretty sizable bid. This market ramped. It went up 15, 16%, and still the retracement is less than 10% of that rally, right?
All off what, right? Fake ETF news. Everyone was super speculative about this being all a BS rally. Look at the price now. We've been sitting range bound at 34,000 for.
Well, it's not BS. I mean, you have multiple news sources. I mean, multiple companies. Everyone predicting that it's inevitable. Gary Gensler has changed his tone. He came out and said, well, we got 8 to 10 things that we're actively considering. It never was that before. It was ignore, deny, push, etc. I mean, it's very, very clear that they're kind of understood that they're going to have to approve this. Mm-hmm. And what they're trying to do is say, yeah, but there are these other bad things over there that we're going after. And a large part of the Hamas story was Cynthia Loomis today saying we should go after the DOJ, actually asking the DOJ to go after Binance, which that's an easier target, and Tether. Now Tether, it's interesting because they've been cooperating with authorities, and they just put out a blog post saying, listen, I don't understand what she's talking about. Yeah. We're doing the right thing. And we know our clients use Tether simply as a mode of trading. Mm-hmm. I guess there are issues there, but Tether claims to be doing what they're supposed to be doing. Whether they are or not, I don't know. And there's clearly other stablecoins like USDC waiting to take over if Tether falters. Mm-hmm. So do we think that's a big deal?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I think this generation's just waiting for another turning point to get on board. I think this rally is going to be big. I think the ETF is going to be the tipping point to it, in my opinion. But with it or without it, I'm glad we're finally seeing interest. And I would also judge the market sentiment as being much more positive recently. Mm-hmm. Right? People are getting involved in it. You see less stories about bad actors, more stories about the positivity about our industry. Mm-hmm. And that's absolutely refreshing after the last couple of years we've had.
Yeah, I mean, of course, the story about the bad actor, I mean, I just got to laugh, with the coverage of the SBF bill. And I was saying internally, or someone asked me, what did I think about Sam's testimony? I said, well, the scheme of trying to use FTX customer money to make it look bigger than it was, to take over Washington, D.C. was really a Bond villain scheme. Yeah. But the way he's acting in the trial is more like Dr. Evil from the Austin Powers movies. I don't know what everyone's feedback on this is. I don't know if it matters, but I do think that the world will be better when he's finally sent away, when, bad guys are punished.
Yeah, I hope he does because, when you tune into these trials, you see that he appears to be clueless, right? It almost looks like he had no idea he was doing something wrong. I don't know if that's just because he's a sociopath or what, but, I hope he actually does get put away because it's starting to look like he might just get off on counts of insanity, right?
I think it's something the crypto community can rally behind as well, right? We kind of always get grouped into this group of bad. You have major companies failing, you have scams, you have rug pulls, etc. In reality, SBF hurt everyone in our industry.
Yeah.
I've seen lives ruined, I've seen people lose everything, and you hate to see that, and you love to see the fact that justice is finally being implemented.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear. I mean, look, he admitted that they started doing client fund use in 2019, which was long before anything else. He says he didn't know it was wrong. He tries to blame his lawyers. I mean, you guys are too young, you don't have kids. When you raise kids, one of the first things you know when there's crumbs all over their face and the dessert is gone, that it's pretty likely that they ate the dessert, whether it's a pie or cake or whatever.
His parents were lawyers.
His parents really should be ashamed of themselves. That it is actually just incredible the irony that goes on with all of this. But, so be it. Yeah. The fact is, the news this week has been interesting. It is good. One of the stories that is not getting shrift is the ever increasing amount of crypto being used for humanitarian aid. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because the bad guys are finding it hard to use and the good guys are finding it easier to use. Mm-hmm. And yet we have, octogenarians and septuagenarians in Congress basically saying, well, we're going to try to take your toys away. What they really are doing, honestly, is they're trying to prop up their allies and their political donors. Yeah. But hey, Right now, the market doesn't seem to care. We're sitting, above or at the bottom end of what I believe will be a new trading range. I put this call out. I think that the new range will be, somewhere in the 32, above the 30 level, up to the 40 level, and then if we break that, then we'll be into price discovery again. But I do think that trading range is likely to hold for a while until we have news. But as the federal government keeps racking up deficits and spending, basically the next generation and the next generation's money before they have a chance to earn it, Bitcoin is a safe haven, and that's what we see.
I have a question. Do you think this rally is going to be short-lived, or do you think this,
No.
coupled with the fact that the ETFs are, starting to be approved, there's talks about them getting approved, and also, the halving typically, historically being a catalyst for what we've seen bull markets start with. What do you think about that? Do you think that this is the start of a bear market, or
No.
a failed?
I think that people need to understand, first of all, today is really important. Because those who remember October of '87, like I do, yes, old, got the gray in the beard to prove it, remember that the week before was relentlessly down, and Friday was a pretty bad day. Well, today, the stock market is relatively healthy. So people are not going to worry over the weekend about a Black Monday event. And once you get past October into November, unless there's a major news story, obviously if there's a massive geopolitical thing that happens, the Straits of Hormuz get closed, something really horrible happens, obviously that could, all bets are off. But the fact is I don't think we're going to see that massive correction immediately. We might very well still see a stock market correction, but Bitcoin is delinked to the tune of over 20% in the last 2 weeks. I mean,
Do you think
that's
that
kind
there
of a
needs
big
to be,
deal.
what you've seen in the 2017 and the 2020 rallies is a massive washout happening, right? And the fact that we sat at the 15, 16K mark for so long, we haven't really had a massive washout.
Oh, I disagree. I think the FTX washout was there, and the fact that we stayed. If you take FTX out of the equation and you go back, we have an 8-month trading range around with a mid-20s kind of support. That creates a very big coiled spring. There were people who were buying at that level, who have seemingly a lot of cash to buy at that level, but they were buying, always scaling downward, never chasing every time it rallied.
Yeah.
What's happened this time is it's at a new level, which means, no, they're not chasing, but they're going to support. It's going to be harder and harder to short it down. And we've all seen what happens when you short this market, when there's potential news coming out. And no one knows when the ETF will be approved. But it's important that people have to understand what that means. Like, we had a discussion on one of the Twitter spaces I was on today where someone said, well, it's going to be a buy the rumor, sell the news event. And I'm like, it might be. If the rumor drives the price to 40, 45,000, yeah, we probably will get a sell-off.
Yeah, right.
Right? And you'll see, they'll be screaming, oh, Bitcoin's selling off after Bitcoin ETF approval. It'll be because it dropped from 45,000 to 38,000 or something like that.
I think one of the things to think about, and a testament to what you just said, is that Bitcoin's starting to trade intraday more like a traditional asset, right? I mean, these rallies aren't that short-lived in general. Bitcoin's sticking around in ranges for a lot longer. It's trading in more range-bound environments, and it's looking a lot more like a S&P in terms of intraday price action. And that's a refreshing thing for someone who's seen the 20K rally in 2017 be so. I mean, that was a day long that happened for, and so it's good to see that Bitcoin can maintain these levels for the time that it has.
One last question I have for both of you actually is, a common theme on crypto Twitter I'm seeing these days is talking about which tokens you want to be having in your portfolio for this next run, etc. Do you think we see new projects rally like the Solana of 2021, or do you think these old projects get the love they used to in that last run? Do you think it's dispersed?
I think it depends on the project is the short answer. I mean, obviously I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what new projects are going to come out that might actually be good. As far as old projects go, ones that have a technology that continues to advance and provide uses, they will do well. So Solana has done very well. Chainlink has done very well. Is that because of the technology or because someone's pumping their bags? Well, I'm not smart enough to know the answer to that, but I suspect it's because the technology is doing better.
And what we see with the companies who are seeing growth right now is that they were growing when everyone else is cutting their jobs, right? And so that's something that Chainlink and Solana, those communities have been growing while everyone was getting rinsed out. So that's positive all around.
Yep.
Yeah, but look, at the end of the day, rallies in crypto are really dependent upon the narrative. If the narrative is we're going with geopolitical issues, war and government debt exploding,
Yeah.
that's going to favor Bitcoin.
Right.
If the narrative is the government has to print money because they need quantitative easing in order to fund those wars, well, that's going to go into all sorts of speculative assets, and that will fund alts. So it really depends on what that is. I mean,
the true narrative behind it.
there's one last story which I had almost forgotten about, which was interesting, is that Galaxy Research came out with a piece that I thought was pretty good. A very clear-eyed view of the amount of money that could come into a Bitcoin ETF, and they pegged it in the first year at around 16 billion, and the second year I think mid 20 billion. So that's like 40 billion in 2 years. Consider that, and consider the mass freakout in the Bitcoin community anytime someone's ever suggested that the Satoshi wallet might get going. Now, why am I pointing that out? Because that's 30 billion. So basically, what you're hearing is that a base case for the Bitcoin ETF is, and this doesn't count people who also view it as a signal for the asset class, the base case for it is the size of the Satoshi wallet or bigger. And it's not entirely clear to me that institutions wouldn't buy more if they thought they could. Because the fact is people, and I worked at a quant hedge fund for a long time, the fact is people size their positions based upon investability. If you think you can only buy a small amount because of the liquidity, you don't buy more. So the more liquid the market gets, that kind of creates that sort of dynamic.
What do you have to say about the narrative that an ETF approval will increase supply and not demand?
Well, that's
I've been seeing a lot of
insane.
that argument.
That is literally, well, it's based on ignorance. I don't like to say it's insane. People have to understand the futures ETF could do exactly that. You could create futures infinitely, and there's nothing stopping you because there's no mechanism. But every one of the spot ETFs that are up for approval that I have seen require custodial holdings of Bitcoin 1-for-1 with the ETF shares, which means that for every $1 billion of Bitcoin in the ETF, there has to be $1 billion of Bitcoin in a custodian. Is it possible that one of the issuers will commit fraud? I mean, I guess it's possible,
Probably.
but unlikely, because if they're a big company like a BlackRock, why would they?
Yeah.
You don't imperil a multi-trillion-dollar business to try to make a smidge more money. That's just dumb, right? It's not like FTX. FTX was trying to make money or make people think he was making money when he was losing money. That's a very big difference. So no, I don't think so. I think that the idea of an ETF, and the reason the spot ETF is so much better than the futures ETF, one of the main reasons, is you actually know that the Bitcoin is there and it's verifiable. And the beauty of Bitcoin compared to gold, because there's gold in vaults for the gold ETF. Who knows how many of those gold bars have lead in the middle of them if you cut them open? With Bitcoin, that cannot happen. No, I mean, seriously. I mean, there's been over $2 billion of fraud that I know of in holdings of gold where there was lead inside bars over the past. I'm not saying there is any. I don't think that iShares or GLD have that problem, but it's much harder to verify.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, anyways, thank you guys for tuning in this week. And Dave mentioned it at the beginning, but please let us know in the comments if there's topics you want us to cover, if there's a format you'd like us to dive into. Open to all suggestions. Thank you guys for tuning in.
And we hope you made a lot of money last week.
And have a good weekend for all of you.